and replicate a blueprint for doing that in local tech ecosystems all over the world. And so that was one of the things that really inspired me to be able to take it to the next level and see what was possible to happen. And look forward to sharing more with you all as we go through the panel.
Femi?
Hi everybody, my name is Femi Masha, and I'm an intellectual property attorney with Brink Skills Family Owned. I guess the way I started was in law school. There were a lot of clinics that our law school provided that allowed me to work with small businesses, work with entrepreneurs, and work with startups. So beginning there, I kind of developed a passion for helping startups, entrepreneurs, and small businesses. Currently at my firm, we deal with a lot of larger clients, a lot of larger companies, more well established, but I do take the time out to either do pro bono work, working with inventors, entrepreneurs, things of that nature, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nneka Ude. How did I get started? So, by trade, advertising, marketing is what I do. I've been in an agency world for quite some time. And I started to see a shift, probably I want to say 08, 09, where obviously automation and new consumer technologies were really coming into the fold, and you started seeing more and more brands trying to figure out how to use them. So through a lot of kind of the navigation of my career, I started really doing a lot of kind of tech consumer reviews for big brands like Coca-Cola and helping them really define how they should go about working with certain technologies and tech platforms. And one of the things that I saw was that there was a bit of a gap, right? So you had all of these really smart people coming up with really smart apps and ideas, but very few of them looked like us, so it led us to believe that we weren't doing it. And even within that, it's really looking at, what's that progression? So we know we're out there, we know we're doing it. That led me down the path to really being able to merge two of the things that I love the best, which is marketing and content. And obviously working a lot with entrepreneurs. So on the side, I do a lot of tech consulting, but then I've also, with my business partner, launched a content platform called The Path, which really looks to inspire and educate entrepreneurs through their own narratives, right? So looking at the world and how diversity and people of color are really kind of taking over this landscape. How do we really start to empower ourselves through our own narratives and use that as a platform to really jumpstart how we move forward from an entrepreneurial perspective?
Hard act to follow. I'm Chico Amadi. I guess I got my start in the tech world when I was probably 6 or 7. My cousin Franklin was living with us, and he was playing video games on DOS, and so we kind of I started to see that some of the games, the cars would start acting differently, and essentially he had reprogrammed the game. I was really interested in making my own hacks, so that's how I got my start. And since then, I haven't really seen technology as an overarching, just an individual thing. I've seen it in everything. And so so that's just my mindset about it. But when I got into business school a couple of years later, I met my co-founder at the time, and we started thinking about how investment into African startups was inefficient, how the venture capital space was inefficient, and what we could do from knowing both sides of the pond, how to really scale.
What we could do to hello? Okay. What we could do to actually scale and improve the overall outcomes in the venture capital space. So we came up with TipHub as a solution, and since after business school, I've been working on the side with TipHub, but eventually started full-time a year or two ago. So that's been the ride, and that's where I am now.
Good evening. My name is Stella Shaulu. And when I think about how I got my start, similar to Chica, it was when I was, old enough to talk and just asking questions after questions after questions, and that insane curiosity, trying to understand problems and how to fix them was really how I started. When you think about technology, I never really planned to be in technology. It just so happened that the companies that I started or the problems that I wanted to solve, I saw technology as a way to facilitate the solution. And I think we're living in a world where really everything around us is becoming somehow technology, and technology is enabling, the most mundane or basic things that we do. So in starting my company, it really just stemmed from seeing a problem that I experienced as a student, and then a problem I later experienced helping my firm try to recruit diverse talent. And I saw that there was really a need to connect these students with opportunities to engage employers in meaningful ways and get experiences that would help them to land the jobs that all of these companies claim to be looking for diverse talent to fill. So that's kind of just a quick overview of where the start was.
Hey everyone, I'm Lorde. I would probably cite the beginning of my interest in technology and innovation back to my time at Bain & Company, when I was working with a number of Fortune 500 companies. And over my couple of years there, I realized that pretty much every case that I had something to do with, when one way or another the business was struggling from a challenge that was forced upon them by disruptions created from technology. So in one case it was that they just didn't have consumer insights capabilities to learn enough about their customers to release products that went to market quickly enough to compete with new technical startups. In other cases it was one where this was an office products business that was doing envelopes and paper and dividers, and guess what? Email and text messaging and WhatsApp came along, and that business was in a deep decline, and they didn't sell it. And so, as I started to go through case after case after case of these Fortune 500 companies that are alive and still doing well, but were facing significant problems, I realized I'd rather be on the other side of the table than on this side where I'm consistently kind of fighting a battle against a tide that will very likely kind of subsume me. And so I started spending a bunch of my free time with early stage technology companies in the LA area where I was based at the time. Realized I really, really enjoyed it, and so was lucky enough to get the opportunities to finance them now on the side. Cool, thank you.
So we're going to go, anybody hear me? Hello? Okay. We're going to go right into the meat of it. So this is for Stella and Neka. What's the most challenging part about being a woman, and even more so a black woman in tech?
I think the challenging part, period, is just having a voice and letting your voice be heard. A lot of times I find myself particularly trying to battle what people don't think you should know, so to speak. So really having that seat at the table and being very firm in that seat has been, I would say, the biggest challenge that I've really faced. And I think that's something that's just typical of being a woman, period. You don't see a lot of black women, so to speak, speaking about technology on a very large and or global scale. It's not like it doesn't exist, but it's just for some reason gone under the radar. So it's always like you're trying to break down the wall of what you're talking about first and foremost, and two, that you have some level of credibility.
Yeah, I would definitely second that. I think the biggest struggle, I debate whether it's being black or if it's being a woman. There's that intersectionality between the two of them, but I guess in either case, it's that perception. And so often, I'm sitting in a room and I see, people, my peers kind of get a certain level of credibility right off the top, but I see it take me having to, explain and communicate to someone's liking until they're like, oh, she actually knows what she's talking about, or she actually has a good idea. You would be surprised how many times I'm like, I've heard, oh wow, that really is a good idea. And I'm like, were you expecting me to say something, unintelligent? But I think the biggest obstacle has been really just myself, in the sense that we don't typically see a lot of people that look like me doing the tech thing. And so, that's a daily struggle to get up every day and say, I'm going to change that, or I'm going to keep pushing, because you don't have that role model to say, I want to be like her, or this is somebody I can go and talk to when I'm having this issue or this struggle. Obviously, we figure out other ways to compensate or to overcome, but I think those two things, perception and just not having that visible model in front of us, has been a big struggle for myself.
Great, thank you. So this is a money question. So I'm gonna try to volley it, because we have great panelists, but we want to be efficient with the time as well. Question, it came from someone said, basically, when I am seeking an investment, what do investors look for? How should I prepare myself to even have a conversation with an investor?
I wonder who should answer that question.
No, it's a good question. I think there are probably a number of different things I point to embedded within that, so I'll start at the top. And the first one is, should you be raising money from investors at all, right? And so what I mean by that is that there are a bunch of different kinds of ways that you might fund the business. Raising money for equity is one of those ways you might go, and going to professional investors like myself and like Chica is one way of attacking the problem. There's kind of debt, there's loans from friends and family to the extent that you can do that, and all of those kind of have different constraints and different things that people are looking to get out of those relationships. Like for instance, in the venture business, like 99% of the businesses that kind of exist in the world today aren't venture-backable companies, right? And I'll explain a little bit more about what I mean by that, but venture investors are like a very small segment of the world. And so, first off, should you be raising money from investors? Question number two is, okay, given that, what kind of investor makes sense for you? Just because, given within the world of even venture investing, there are folks who have different specialities, different sectors that they play in, different stages of investment that they like to pursue, different amounts of capital that they like to put to work in companies. And so understanding what their preferences are and what they actually spend time on is crucial to kind of figuring out who's the right person to approach. And then the third piece, once you've figured out those two things, are, okay, what do I need to say to convince them to actually be willing to part with their cash? And I can speak about that from a venture perspective. I would say for us, and I think for most other venture investors this is true, for each investment that we make, we kind of look for that investment on its own to be able to return the entire fund, so the entire pot of money that we've gone and raised from other people. And so what I mean by that is, let's say, I'm going to create a hypothetical example here. Let's say I was lucky enough to go and raise a $250 million fund, right? So a significant amount of cash to work in early stage companies. And let's say for each investment that I make in a company, I get 25% of the company, right? What that means is, for any given investment that I make, I need that investment to have the potential to be $1 billion business, because 25% of that billion is through my $250 million, right? And knowing that, because a bunch of these companies aren't going to work, or a couple of these companies are only going to return me 1x my money or 2x my money, I'm going to need one or two to be that $1 billion business in order for me to be able to return the money plus and then some to the folks who gave me money to invest in the first place. And so, breaking that down a bit, what does that actually mean in terms of what I look for? I look for really big markets, so markets that actually can have companies within them that can be worth $1 billion. I look for markets that are broken in ways that a company can fix and fix uniquely, right? So doing something that no one else can do in a way that truly solves that problem. I look for a company that can kind of grow and scale profitably, so a company that doesn't require raising $15 billion to make a $1 billion company. And of course a team that I think can get me from point A to point B. So those are some examples. And I guess when I think about that tactically, if you're going out to go raise money from investors, it's everything from building a pitch deck, right? So having a fundraising kind of document that describes your opportunity and what you're building in a way that's compelling to an investor. Knowing your business inside and out, so it's the market, the key metrics, everything that any question that I would have about the business and the opportunity, being able to answer it thoroughly. And then thirdly, being able to do that in a way that's concise and compelling, because nobody wants to listen to someone like me going on down forever.
I'm gonna flip it a little bit. before you even go out and raise for an investment, like I think there's a lot of good practice to figure out what type of investment. So even before you're looking for cash or some type of financial instrument as an investment, you have to be able to sell and pitch people to work with you. For me at least, we're not, when we get to the point where we're investing in companies, we're not investing in solo founders, right? So can you believe enough in the business to get somebody to invest their time and sweat equity into the company, right? Two, can you get a first customer to invest their money into your company, right? In terms of being a customer. I think even before you get to the point where you're thinking about investment, if you can get those things at a scalable fashion as a company, I think getting to the point where you're having conversations and saying, okay, we're going to need X $1 million or $500,000 will be a little bit easier. But you have to have down pat that you could sell and get people to invest in you, sweat equity and actual consumer cash before. And this is it's not for every type of business, but it's for the specific tech, low cost of capital businesses. Of course, they're like life science tech businesses, robotics, all these other technology companies that may take a little bit of R&D. But for a lot of the companies that everybody here might be thinking about, it's definitely more about getting people. I think the challenge is getting people to invest.
Just want to piggyback off of what you said also. You talked about friends and family, and Fabian or anybody else can kind of talk to this. Many of us here are first generations. Investment was an issue, and many of our parents' top of things to do. Like nobody can't go to my mom and say, "Can you give me $1 million?" And I'm sure, can anybody, mom, give you $1 million? Okay, if you are, I want to talk to you after this. So talk about that challenge. I mean, the disparity. We talk about like some people, we watch Silicon Valley will write their business plans on a napkin and get a $500 check. But first generation African, second generation African immigrant. Also, this is not just an African problem. We know in the Black community and Latino community, this is also an issue. Basically the family wealth that plays a big role. So can you all kind of speak to that a little bit and the challenges of how to navigate that?
I can reach you. Okay. So, yes, the reality is for most African immigrants, first generation, second generation, descendants of immigrants, it's really challenging to get 3 Fs. But I think I was just having this conversation with Boyede the other day. There are other resources that you have that make up for money. If I had to make a spectrum of assets, intangible to like financial, I think that there are a lot of really intangible assets that the immigrant community, the African diaspora has that they can take advantage of. For example, I believe that there's a low cost, depending on the business you're in, there's a lower cost of acquisition because of the way the communities are constructed. And that means that you can you can go to a wedding and get 400 people. You can get 400 people to sign up for something because Africans have that big of a wedding, right? And in other situations, it'd be pretty hard to get 400 people into a room. So I believe that lower cost of capital can be an opportunity to mitigate the initial investment that may go into, initial capital costs that may go into marketing, for example. And this is from like just thinking from a lean startup perspective. Oftentimes people think they need to have their app built. And going back to what Stella said, think about everything is tech enabled. If everything's tech enabled, forget the tech part if you're not capable of building it, and think about the enablement, right? What is the actual product or service that you actually want to deliver, right? So that's, for example, one of the companies I'm working on, Omnis AI, it's a virtual assistant service, right? Or a product. It's a product. But if I don't have the AI built, I can actually sell the service of virtual assistants. But what I would need to do is find people that could be virtual assistants at a cost that makes sense to me,
what's the best legal structure to structure my company? Should I do an LLC? Should I be an S corp? Should I be a Delaware C corp? Should I be a sole proprietorship? Can you speak to some of that? I'm gonna kind of give it to Femi, lawyer on the panel.
A lot of startups technically use LLC versus a partnership or corporation. That being because LLC makes you a lot more flexible depending on how you want to grow. It gives you that flexibility of adding as many shareholders as you want versus a corporation where like an S corp, for example, is limited shareholders. I think only about 100 shareholders for an S corp, and for LLC, as it says, a limited liability company, none of the liability goes to any of the owners of the actual LLC versus the S corp or the C corp or a partnership where only a general partner and a limited liability partner, and liability does extend to that general partner. So most startups that I've seen, most startups that I've worked with, have always started out with the LLC. It's cheaper and it's easier for you to grow and have as many people as you want on your team to be a part of your startup.
One thing to add, which is, I kind of alluded to this before, that venture capitalists often raise money from other big institutional investors, so think pension funds or kind of government endowments, things along those lines. And a lot of the documents that they kind of create when they create a fund can limit the kinds of legal entities that VC funds are allowed to invest in. And so in a lot of cases, what you'll find is that VCs will only invest in C corps. And so what you'll see is that companies will start out as LLCs in a lot of cases, and then when it comes time for them to take a lot of big kind of VC institutional money, they'll end up converting over into a C corp at that point. But it makes sense to start as an LLC for a bunch of reasons that I mentioned.
Question, don't a lot of them also kind of prefer the partnership, the general and limited? Am I mistaken?
So the VC funds themselves are constructed that way, but in terms of the kinds of companies they invest in, they almost always are C corps.
So this is for Nneka Fabian. We're talking about the story of African immigrants. One very popular story of an African immigrant is the outgoing president. Everybody can cry now. When we talk about a story, can you kind of explain like what does that story look like? And what's the current state? What's the current state of the Black tech ecosystem? And how do we engage the African diaspora into that ecosystem? And then for Nneka, how do we tell that unique story to kind of attract people to our brands and kind of grow our businesses?
Yeah, on the side of the house, it's like, where do we stand now as a diaspora and as a Black tech community? I'm feeling pretty hopeful about how things are looking as far as, I think that there's a couple different things that are being put in place as far as the visibility. So for a while, there were just conversations happening. The idea behind diversity in tech took a bit of time to really start catching steam. And the interesting thing now is that those conversations are starting to turn into dollars. And anytime you start to see something go from an idea to resources coming behind it, what that signals to me is people are finally starting to understand it and people are finally starting to see value in it. And some of the things that stick out to me is even how governments are starting to engage in bringing capital to the table. I know just here locally in Chicago and Illinois, you have Kurt Summers' Fund 77 Fund, where he's raising about $100 million to invest in 77 different communities across the next 3 years. You have the Illinois State Fund, where I think they had about either a little bit above $200 million that they're going to be investing in around the state. And then even the Illinois State Treasurer, he has his own fund where they're going to be investing some money. And so I think it's really encouraging to see that happening, but the catch is going to be, how are we going to get a piece of that pie? And so I think that's where the resources are starting to move, things are starting to happen. There is resources and opportunities that are starting to emerge, and I think it's now more important than ever for us to figure out how to work together better as a diaspora, figure out how to be able to attack those resources, making sure we're keeping it in the family.
So in terms of how you tell that story, every story starts out with data, right? So you have to quantify, we have to quantify ourselves far more than any other community, which is a little ridiculous if you really think about it in terms of how much we spend and how much we are, how much we spend and what our consumer power is as a whole. But we still need to be able to quantify ourselves from a data perspective in terms of what we're doing, both from a tech entrepreneurial perspective or entrepreneurship as a whole. We need to quantify our value in terms of if you have an idea like Oja Express and what the size of that market is and what the power of that market is in terms of it being a viable opportunity, that data is important. And we have to dimensionalize ourselves in ways that no other community really has to. And the one thing I have to encourage everyone when it comes down to starting your business and really being able to grow it is don't shortchange yourself in terms of what you're collecting about who your customer is, because you're not going to be able to find that data to be able to validate whatever decision you're making in terms of the road that you're going down from an idea perspective out there in the general market. I work in advertising. The data that we get third party is robust, but everybody's black, right? And it's black African American. There's no dimension to what black really means in the US. There's no dimension to what Latino really means in the US. So all of that gets really lumped up into one big kind of bucket. And so it's really hard to be able to validate whether or not this idea is going to work with this community, even though we have a ton of buying power. And obviously that buying power translates into something that is powerful. So data is how we tell a story.